all these amazing technologies taking our health in the wrong direction, because what it's doing is it's keeping us always in a cortisol loop. The cortisol has an impact on blood sugar. So it has an impact on how we use insulin and glucose, and how we break down fats and proteins for energy. And it impacts our mood. As I talked about anxiety and depression, people are put on medications for, to help their neurotransmitters when there's a direct correlation of cortisol impacting that.
Welcome to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, the podcast for high achievers who want to stay sharp, focused, and full of energy despite their diagnosis. With your host, National Board Certified Functional Medicine Health Coach, Julie Michelson, where Julie helps you take your power back from autoimmunity. And now here's your host, Julie Michelson.
Welcome back to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast. I'm your host, Julie Michelson. And today I'm joined by Dr. Tricia Pingel, the Adrenal Whisperer, a leading naturopathic physician who specializes in stress and cortisol management. She's transformed and empowered countless women, guiding them from feeling wired and tired to a state of calm and connected. Dr. Pingel is the best-selling author of Total Health Turnaround. She's a hip-hop dancer, retired fashion model, and visionary CEO, shaping the future of holistic wellness. In today's conversation, we are talking about the connection between stress and autoimmunity and the role of adrenal health in overall well-being. Listen in to learn about the healing power of connection, joy, grace, and love. Dr. Pingel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited for our conversation because I know it's going to be fantastic. And I love your journey. I love what you do. And I want you to just really start out with, how did you become the Adrenal Whisperer? That's pretty cool.
Well, I think there's so many different ways how names develop like that, but essentially I'm just like many of your listeners. I've just powered through my entire life.
Right.
I was taught you're an overachiever. You just keep pushing. You just keep going, just keep chugging along, just keep plugging along. And despite the death of my parents, despite the death of my grandparents, despite going through medical school and getting married and buying homes and having children and building a practice and all of this, I literally just did exactly that. I just powered through. And although I've always really been into the endocrine system, I've always loved hormones. I love how they can change on a dime. I think that system in our body is fascinating, but it wasn't really until I just kind of found myself saying exactly what my patients were saying. I'm tired. I don't have any joy in life. I feel like I'm just running on empty. I'm, exhausted. I'm sad. I'm crying. I don't know what I'm doing with my life. And I felt very lost. And I think there's so many of us that feel that way, but yet we feel like we're supposed to just keep powering through.
Right.
So I started just really getting vocal about the impact that stress has on our body, both internal stressors and external stressors, and how our health depends so much on being calm and being really focused and resting. That I guess the more I talked and the more I brought up about it and talked about what I do, I became the Adrenal Whisperer, because really the adrenals are not straightforward. It's not like, hey, take ashwagandha and all your problems will go away.
Oh, come on.
I know. But you have to address what's causing the stress in the first place. And it's not always what you think. It could be something that you're just not aware of. And I think you really have to, want to dig down to the root cause of the issue. And I absolutely enjoy doing that. Like, it's one of my favorite things to do. So here I am.
I love it. And it, again, so needed. I don't know that, 1,000 years ago, we needed an Adrenal Whisperer, but we definitely do now. So
without a doubt.
Yeah. Can we talk a little bit about, you mentioned like the internal stressors and external stressors, and it may sound obvious to you and me, but what are, I think external stressors are, everyone probably has a fair handle on that, maybe, if they think about it. but what are some of the internal stressors you're talking about?
Well, yeah. So external stressors, I think people know the big ones, right?
Right.
But I don't know if people realize that scrolling on Instagram provides a stress response. Like, I don't think people understand those types of external stressors, right? The little beep of your cell phone, the addiction to having to scroll and see more and gather info, and that all that information coming at us is also an external stressor. So don't lose track of that. The internal stressors, though, could literally be anything. I mean, perimenopause is an internal stressor. Having trouble detoxifying toxins, constipation, not removing, not going to the bathroom regularly, poor nutritional habits, or loss of nutrition. And ironically, what fascinates me is that just an external stressor, let's say the death of a parent,
Sure.
causes a stress response.
Right.
But the stress response then causes particular nutrient deficiencies, trouble absorbing food, inappropriate rest, downregulates toxin removal, cellular repair. So just one external stressor can in turn actually cause internal stressors. And I think what people need to be aware of is that we've adapted to this because we're amazing. Like, our bodies are amazing. And they adapt to stress, to keep going, to fight through. But this adaptation is actually doing us a disservice because we're spending more time trying to run from bears in our life than we are actually resting, digesting, and healing. And it's really becoming a problem where the external and the internal are now becoming very intertwined. This isn't just, hey, go to therapy, take care of your trauma. I mean, that's a part of it. But you also have to look at, was the mitochondria impacted by stress? Are you low in vitamin C? Are you having trouble? Is your liver backed up because the body doesn't have rest enough to remove toxins? I mean, these are all things we have to be paying attention to. Unfortunately, we just do. And if we do, we can adapt back. We can adapt back to the times where we weren't as worried about it, which would be great.
Right. Wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? I want to touch on two of the things, because I think it's really important. You mentioned scrolling, and we hear this, right? So stressors, which often we think of stressors as negative things, right? Right. But stressors don't always feel bad.
Right.
I'm guessing listeners are saying, well, but wait a minute, it's relaxing for me to be scrolling, right? Or, boy, it feels so good when I eat the bowl of ice cream. Like, how can this be a stressor? If you have issues with dairy and sugar, and everybody has issues with sugar, but so can we I want to hear your perspective on, does stress always feel bad in the moment?
No, it usually doesn't, actually, but our body doesn't know the difference.
Right.
It doesn't, all it knows is it's being stimulated. So if you think of stress like a stimulation, I think one of the best ways to go about this is imagine you're in the woods, you're hiking along, and you see a bear, right? And you have this reaction like, oh, there's a bear, right? Your body chemistry changes, and then you run, and there's another bear, and there's another bear, and there's another bear. Ideally, we're supposed to get away from the bear and rest. Then what the body starts to do, because it can't get away, is it starts to anticipate the next bear.
Right.
So social media plays into that anticipation. It plays into that. I think there's going to be a bear. I don't want to miss this story. I know, what happened? And you scroll again. I get more like that. And it's actually playing with your neurotransmitters, first of all, that makes you feel good. But more importantly, when it comes to a health perspective, is that it's actually creating anticipatory bears. And
I love that.
Our levels of anxiety are insane. It's like 43% of Americans in the last year say they have more stress and anxiety than they did the year before. We are ridden with anxiety. And if you really think about it, what is anxiety? It's the anticipation of that bear. It's what's going to happen next. And then you coming up with all the different things that could happen, which is getting ahead of yourself. And unfortunately, social media plays into that. And I realize I'm on social media. I realize I get out there and I dance and I, teach people about health in a fun way. And the reason I do that is I'm trying to reduce that stress. But at the same time, I'm not sitting on social media scrolling every day, right? So I think there's a balance. I think it's one thing to catch up with people or spend a moment, but how much are you missing
Right.
during that time that you could be doing for your health? You could be out for a walk. You could be making a nutritious meal with your friends, so there's a lot we're starting to miss, and that adaptation to that bear, we're starting to not notice. And
Yes.
that's what
Oh,
concerns me
you
most,
just
is that
totally
adaptation. Yeah.
read my next question, which
Yeah.
was, it's along the same lines. You just right out of my brain, you took it. Which is because I hear this all the time. So I want you to share with listeners. Do you, well, you already hit on, anxiety is higher than ever. Because of how we're living now, stress, our inputs are higher than ever. I hear all the time though, but I don't feel stressed out. I don't need to go for a walk. I don't need to meditate. I don't need to whatever, fill in the blank. I don't feel stressed out.
Mhm.
If stress is playing a role impacting health,
Mhm.
do you think we necessarily are feel, obviously some of us feel stressed out when we are, but this whole, I do think there's this misconception about, because I don't identify as anxious or feel like I can't control whatever. So my stress is fine. I don't have everyone has stress, right?
Yeah, it's like if you're not having a panic attack, you're not stressed, right?
Right.
I ask people when they say, well, I don't have any stress. And I say, okay, are you tired? Yes. Do you sleep well? Not really. Are you noticing any hormonal changes? Oh my God, I have hot flashes all the time. Is your hair falling out? Oh, I hate that. Hair falling out all the time. Do you ever get bloated, or do you feel like you're holding on to a lot of weight? Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm like, okay, these are all signs of stress adaptation. Just because stress can present in every single system in our body. Cortisol is linked into every single system. I mean, there was something with autoimmunity that like more than 85% or something of people have a stressful event before the onset of their autoimmunity, but they don't link the stress to the immune system. That just doesn't link there.
I bet it's higher.
So I mean, I will give people a challenge. I will take that you're not stressed if you feel freaking fantastic. You're on no medications, your labs are spot on, you're never bloated, you're sleeping well, you feel great, your life is full of joy. I will agree with you. You have managed the stress.
But
I don't find very many people who've done that.
But you just used a key word, managed. That's the thing. Like if you're not intentionally managing stress, I promise you have at least one, if not many of those symptoms. Like we have to, again, it's kind of the input output thing, like in our modern life, because like you said, it's little stress. Our body doesn't know the difference between good stress, bad stress, big stress, little stress. Everything is, you say bear, I say lion, either or. Actually, I should say bear. I live in Colorado.
I live in Arizona.
Or like, mountain lion.
I don't know. I guess I need to say scorpion.
Yeah. So, but so if we're not if we're not managing intentionally, I promise, if you're a listener and you're thinking, oh, first of all, if you feel okay, you're probably not listening to the podcast if you're happy with how you're feeling. But it takes intention, I think.
In every aspect. I mean, I talk about 4 different areas. Once you've identified your external stressors and your internal stressors, and it takes a physician often, or a health coach, or somebody to do lab work to find those internal stressors, because you don't know how your mitochondria are working. Like, I don't know. I walk in and go, how's your mitochondria today? People are like, oh, I don't know. Right.
Well,
we need to find those things.
Across the board. And I agree. I'm such a like data geek. I love the labs because we want to get better as quick as we can. Right. But I promise, like, if you're expressing active autoimmune symptoms, your mitochondria is probably not so happy.
Right. Oh yeah. You may not need the labs.
But why?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, but then the why. Yeah.
If you have a diagnosis, that can lead you to the internal stressors, but you have to identify both. And then you have to address it from 4 different areas. You have to address it from nutrition, because if your body's under stress, it has nutrient depletions. Number two, moving with intention, exactly what you're saying, movement with intention and focus and in a calm state. You cannot lose weight in a stressed state. You cannot, because the body is going to pack on the fat around the abdomen so you can run from the next anticipated bear. So there's a very important aspect to movement. And then there's supplement with wherever your imbalances have been found. And then there's mindset. It's making a choice to change. It's making a choice to interpret stress in a different way. And that's where I think the biggest skill comes from. And it's where our medical society is lacking because we don't teach that. We find all the things, we do all the data points and we say, oh, you're low in vitamin C. Here's your supplement. Take care now. See you next year. You know, instead of really saying, well, okay, why are we like that to begin with? And how can we now change the way that we interpret, manage, address stress? Because the stress is not going away. I think we can all agree that, I mean, I run 2 businesses. I have teenagers. I'm married. I have dogs. I mean, there's always stuff going on in my world, and that's okay. It just kind of depends on how you look at it, how you reframe it, and what you choose to do about it. I'm choosing not to spend an hour on social media because I can choose to go outside and take a walk, which is going to benefit me in the long term, right? Everything we do is a choice. And I think and always saying never do this or always do this doesn't help us out. We have to learn how to make a choice in the moment that favors the healthier choice. And it's literally that simple. Health is one choice at a time. We put money in our bank account out of our paycheck every month for retirement so that we can live this amazing retirement where we can go party, turn 65, right? We can go party, we can have a great time. If you don't have your health, you can't do as much as you want. So why aren't we putting a quarter into our health bank every single day? Just one. We don't have to put $1 million into our account in one day, but we need to do something. We need to do one choice. Am I going to eat the eggs or the oatmeal for breakfast? That's a choice, right?
I love that. I love that was your breakfast choice.
That wasn't my breakfast choice.
No. I love that those are the 2 you came up with because, but that would take us in a whole different direction. But stop eating oatmeal for breakfast, people. It's not healthy. They sold you a bill of goods. It's not a great way to start your day.
But I mean, you can make a choice.
Sure.
Every single thing that you do is a choice, right? You have a choice when you wake up to allow your day to take you down, to allow that when you walk downstairs and you grab your cup of coffee and someone comes in, like my 13-year-old's moody. He's just moody. Like he just is.
Because he's a 13-year-old.
Yeah. And he'll come down there and I have a choice. I can let his moody snippiness ruin my day, or I can just kind of laugh and be like, hey, good morning, dude, and leave the room. Like I have a choice. Yeah. And I think we forget that. We feel so out of control running from the bear. We run so fast and we're turning the corner and prepping for the next bear that we forget that things don't happen to us. They happen for us, but we have to pay attention. If we don't pay attention, it's going to take us down. The bear will eventually eat you. So it's little mindset shifts where it's just, is this worth my energy to even like have a reaction over? Those are things that I wish our medical society would spend more time talking to people about, because as easy as it sounds, it's one of the hardest things to do.
Well, and I feel like even if stress is addressed in a traditional medical setting, I shouldn't use the word addressed. I think it's often brought up. But then that's it, right? Like, oh, you need to manage your stress better. Well, how? When you feel out of control, that doesn't even sound possible.
Yeah, and taking the time to do that, right? Like for example, just using your phone to good use, setting a timer on your phone every hour to just breathe for a minute.
Yes.
People say, I don't have time to go to counseling. I don't have time to do this plan. I'm like, well, how about just a couple minutes a day of just walking outside for 1 minute, 60 seconds. And taking a breath. And when people say, gosh, Dr. P, I literally don't have time. I'm like, okay, there's
a problem
in the bear. There is a problem. Everybody has 1 minute, an hour.
Well, and if you tell me you can't find the time, it's because you need to make the time.
Do 1 minute less of scrolling then, and let's do that breathing, you know what I mean? So, I mean, it's little things like that that may not, in the moment, it actually, breathing and going outside actually does reduce cortisol levels pretty quickly.
Yes.
But some people are so, I guess, adapted that they don't notice it in that moment.
Sure.
But collectively, over time, it's just like that health bank. After a week of doing it, you're going to be calmer. I guarantee you. I've been kind of like testing people and say, how long does it take before you feel calmer with this exercise? Everyone has been within 48 hours. So most people within the same day. So
Yeah.
there's a 48-hour
Amazing.
free tip right now. Free tip.
Free
Don't have to
tip.
go to the doctor. Go outside, take a few deep, full breaths, and state gratitude for just being alive.
I love how you just stacked. That was awesome. Notice, listeners, she threw in a third thing in there. I love it. But that's the thing, right? Like, because now we're so programmed to wear busyness like a crown, right? Or accomplishment, or and health is an accomplishment, by the way. But so if you're like that whole story, I don't have time, or like bang for the buck, that she gave you 3 things. You could spend 1 minute doing 3 things. It's not even 3 minutes, just 1 minute, 3 things, huge hit. I love it. And I'm gonna up level it one more time for stacking. Do it first thing in the morning, barefoot.
Yep.
And get the sun in your eyes.
Yeah.
You're just starting something amazing.
Don't check your phone before you do it. When you get up,
Yes.
walk outside, put your feet in the grass, get the sun, do your breath. Do not check your phone. Nothing has happened. There's no bear that you can't handle in 60 seconds. It's
Yes.
fine.
And you'll handle the bear so much better is the key.
That phone away from your head at night. I just did a speech. It's actually pretty funny. Last week I was doing a corporate event and I was giving a speech and I said, how many of you have your phone by your head? A bunch of people raised their hand and one woman, and I said, why do you sleep with your phone by you? And she goes, oh, well, I need an alarm clock. And I said, that is my favorite answer, because every single person has walked into a drugstore and can find an alarm clock for $10 or less.
Right.
Phone is not an alarm clock.
Well, and even put it far away and turn it up. Like, no.
I don't even want it in the room.
Or like, what's happening? Well, mine's off. It's not even on. Like, it's airplane mode and far away. And everybody has stories about why. This is not what you thought I was going to ask you today. Why are we, is it that cortisol? Like, why are we so attached to our phones? I mean, I'm not.
We are, because
but that's a conscious choice.
It's a conscious choice, and it's a FOMO. I'm going to miss something if I don't do it. What happened? When I fell asleep behind the tree, how many bears did I miss? Did I miss something important? Silly. I mean,
I'm older than you, but I lived in a time where if you were on the phone, nobody else could get through, and you didn't know you missed the call, and then call waiting came, right?
Yep.
And then answering machines came. Like, it's just, I feel like it's not going in a good, it takes conscious choice to change. I think the technology, like, I love that I can talk to you and I can see you and you're in Arizona and I'm in Colorado, and that's great. And listeners from around the world get to listen to the conversation. So all these positives, but if we don't use these good things with intention, it's.
Remember when the workday was 9 to 5?
What?
I know. And you woke up, you had breakfast with your kids.
And you had to clock out for lunch. You had to take lunch.
You did. You were required. And in fact, and I was born in the 70s and grew up with answering machines. And if you missed a call, you missed a call, and your work, you didn't get work calls at home. You got them at the office. If you wanted to talk to work people, you had to go to the office, check
between 9 and 5 is when that would happen.
If you wanted to reach someone, you had to call them between 9 and 5 because they weren't there. And I think there's a beauty in that. And I think we can use the current technology with that same understanding, right? We shouldn't be interrupted during dinner with a work call. And I'm saying that as a concierge doctor. Like, I'm not trying to be hypocritical. I understand my patients may need to reach me, but all the emails I get don't need to be checked. I can set up functions on my phone so that only certain people can interrupt me in emergency situations.
Right.
When mom was dying, people say, well,
Sure.
what if you get a call in the middle of the night? Well, what we did is we set up a VoIP home phone system.
Smart.
And we gave the phone number to the hospice people.
Sure.
And that's it. Nobody else could call me on that.
You knew.
So if that phone rang, I knew
Yeah.
darn well the only person it could be. And my cell phone was put far away and nobody else could bother me.
Yeah.
And, that peace of mind, like just knowing that you can remove yourself from that. So to answer your question, if you're someone who leaves the house and you forgot your phone and you start freaking out, you have stress. You
Yes.
have adrenal issues. There's the answer right there. If you can't go
that.
without, you feel like you're missing something all the time. You're not caught up with everything. I mean, we get so caught up trying to be everybody else and trying to do so many things and be busy and be productive and look good
And
to
be
everybody else.
perfect.
The amount of energy that takes is exhausting. And
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know if you knew this, but I grew up in the modeling industry. I was a model from the time I was
remember.
born.
Yep.
And everything was about external appearance, right? About
Yeah.
you need to look like you're perfect all the time.
Yes.
You
No
may
pressure.
right. Yeah. And it's exhausting. And I don't think it's just models that feel that. I think growing up, we all look at pictures. People were probably looking at me in a magazine and saying, wow,
Well, and back then it was in a magazine or on TV or a movie, right? It wasn't thousands of people all the
we also
time.
didn't have Photoshop. So we
No,
have to be
it
very
was real.
skilled in how you turn your head and your body. And
You
it's
knew
a
your
whole
good
game.
angles. Yeah.
But I think we're so quick to beat up on ourselves when we compare ourselves to everybody else. And I'd like to go back to the time where we have an answering machine that we check during work, spend time with our family, and we show up to the football games and we're present without trying to do that to impress anybody else.
Right.
That you're the mom that always shows up to the football games. I don't care what anyone else thinks. I'm going because I want to be there with my kids. And that's what I try to focus on. And sometimes I get interrupted on my cell phone and I turn it off. It's not time to interrupt me. And I think we have to start setting those boundaries for ourselves.
I love it.
Going nowhere. Like otherwise there's just bears everywhere. And I don't see how we can come out of our health crisis as a nation if we don't start really paying attention to this. I just don't see how it's possible.
So well said. Like I would give you a standing ovation, but that would be probably a really awkward camera angle. So I won't. I want to talk about, because sometimes we jump in because we live in this world, right? And we're talking about adrenals and we're talking about stress, and you mentioned cortisol. And then people, I feel like hopefully they understand that connection, and maybe we can touch on all of it.
Sure.
You did explain, how our system is designed, and it's designed for acute stressors. And so now we have multiple acute stressors, we have chronic stressors, we have all the things, right? We have stressors that feel good, so we don't want to admit they're stressors. And then I think we probably also have way more internal stressors than we did thousands of years ago too.
Absolutely.
I think cortisol gets a bad rap. I think because we talk about adrenals and we talk about, this, well, whether high or low, but I think people think cortisol is bad. Talk to us a little bit about cortisol. And it's like rolling either inflammation or even just, like it has a good job, and we dysregulate it through all those stressors.
Yeah. I mean, cortisol is amazing. It's incredible. If you really did see a bear and you needed to run, your body will adapt and it will survive. And it is amazing. And because of that, it has a hand in every single system. It changes our heart rate. It changes our blood pressure. It changes the way we divert energy. It downregulates things that aren't important. And when you need it, it is there. And it's really important. Anyone who's gone through a major stressor and has had to, where you almost feel like you're not present and you just somehow you manage to get through it. That's cortisol. The problem is everything is a stressor. So our body is getting very confused. And we're putting in toxins, like you were saying, internal stressors are so much higher. We're putting in toxins in our food, in our air, in our products. You know, we're being exposed to so much in our environment, more so than we used to. We saw cancer rates go up when we started to get, you know, special coatings on nonstick pots, and, you know, like the whole Teflon industry and all of the rubbers we started using in clothing and in accessories and things like that. All these things that were these amazing technologies that actually took our health the wrong direction. And I think when we were talking about technology, this is an amazing thing, but it's taking our health in the wrong direction, because what it's doing is it's keeping us always in a cortisol loop. So cortisol is released when you see that bear, along with other neurotransmitters. It's released from the adrenal gland. The cortisol has an impact on, and my book talks about this, each chapter talks about this, but it has an impact on blood sugar. So it has an impact on how we use insulin and glucose, and how we break down fats and proteins for energy. You know, I always laugh when people say, and they're not wrong, but give me a second on this one. They say, well, you need to eat lots of protein as you get older to build muscle. I don't argue that. You do need protein. But if you're under stress, your body's not going to break it down well. Right. So then you're eating 200 grams of protein and you're getting stomach aches and you're not losing weight. And you're like, well, that doesn't work. Well, because
so wait, does stress also impact digestion and 100%. Our enzymes that we're supposed to make?
Yeah, you know, it lowers your hydrochloric acid. It downregulates the release of the enzymes from the pancreas. It downregulates gallbladder function. I mean, gallbladder removal is one of the #1 surgeries in our country, and it's just dismissed. Well, just don't eat fat. Well, we need our gallbladder, you know.
Right. It's not there by accident. It wasn't an extra spare part. Like, come on.
Right. And it impacts our mood. You know, as I talked about anxiety and depression, people are put on medications for, you know, to help their neurotransmitters when there's a direct correlation of cortisol impacting that. If you're in the woods and you see a bear, you're not going to sleep well, especially if you saw a bear every time, right? And yet we still walk down the same path, don't we?
Yeah.
We know 8 bears down this path, and we show up in the morning and we say, you know what?
I'm gonna be ready for that bear
again. And then you're walking around with your bear spray. You know, you're like, okay, I know it's coming. I'm ready. I'm ready for this.
You
bear.
actually do sound like you live in Colorado, by the way.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But you know, we can choose to think of the bear in a different way. It could be a little bear cub. We could choose a different path. We could divert before we know the bear is coming. We have a lot of different options, and internally our body does the same thing. It diverts with medications, it diverts with stress response, it diverts if it goes for progesterone and it's not there, it'll find a different way to get there, right? So I think the point is that cortisol is good when the body is calm 80% of the time. But we're not spending 80% of the time in a calm state. We're spending more and more every year, more percentage in this sympathetic nervous system, this fight or flight. I've got to beat this bear. I'm just going to prep for it. If I prep for it, I'll be fine. No, right?
Yeah.
You have to actually be accepting. I mean, things happen. Things happen.
Sure.
And they could be devastating. I've had numerous times in my life where something's been absolutely just knocked me on my butt and devastated. Sure. And in the moment, I thought I will never get through.
Right.
And
we do.
But in hindsight, it was some of the best things that ever happened to me, because they turned my focus to take a different path. And there's a lot of different good that comes out of those stressful moments, and trying to be prepared and be a perfectionist and figure out how to beat that bear is not always the answer. Sometimes we just have to submit.
Well, and that being a perfectionist does not serve you health-wise, period.
And how boring to be a perfectionist all the time.
Well, but they're going to end up, you know, finding you or finding me, or because you are always, even if you're not a type A, but if you're an inner perfectionist, you're going to end up inflamed. You're going to end up, you know, kind of always in a bear, looking for the bear. And so, or living with the bears. One or the
and that doesn't sound fun. I'd rather be a little perfect and have a little bit more fun, you know, dance a little more, play a little more, you know, and make mistakes. I mean, that's
and I know, you know, the dancing, that I love that you are still embracing dancing and sharing it with people. Joy, like that's the other I think, danger to this, modern technology. I was complimenting that we can be on Zoom in different places and then people get to hear, and that's amazing. But the joy is really essential. It's always balancing, like cortisol needs balancing, right? It's supposed to, if we have an optimized circadian rhythm, cortisol is our friend, like not even just in a stress response. It gives us energy in the morning when we wake up, right? It's anti-inflammatory. So I just wanted to, it's not, cortisol's not bad.
Right.
It's constantly cranking it out that leads to bad things. And maybe those bad things are then you can't really make it very well. And now you have no energy, it's that moderation.
It is. And, like cortisol, you're right. It's anti-inflammatory in an acute state. In a chronic state, it's very inflammatory.
Right.
It's like yin and yang. It's
right.
like people are like, oh, cortisol, it's not my cortisol because that's anti-inflammatory and I'm really inflamed. Well, wait a minute.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I know.
Thank you for clarifying.
But I'm saying it's interesting because there is always a balance. And, I think when you're talking about joy too, a lot of people say, well, great, you can just put on a smile and pretend to be joyous. No, I mean, I just watched, I love Inside Out, loved that movie. I would just watch the second one. With joy comes sadness. With sadness comes anger. With anger comes,
if you're shut down because you don't want to feel the feelings you don't want to feel, you're also not really experiencing joy. But also the dance, and what made me think of the joy is, and even just your face when you say dance, it's like, oh, I can feel the joy. I get it, like a just beautiful neurotransmitter cascade from your joy. I think dancing brings everybody joy. I don't need people looking at me when I do it because nobody, although, I mean, it will create laughter. So that's always good. But we need some of those balancing chemicals too, that is part of, I always include joy as part of stress management, because it's essential and sadly also takes intention these days. It can, some people have forgotten about it. Like they think they outgrew it in childhood or in early adulthood. Yeah. And so it breaks my heart when I ask a client, what brings you joy? And I get the deer in the headlights look.
I get
and
that
it's
a lot.
like, oh, me too. That's why they're meeting with us, right? It's a component of it. Recreating joy and reintroducing people to joy is just such a pleasure and an honor. But what happened? We shouldn't have to figure out, oh yeah, it's not a bonus, it's part of life. We're supposed to experience joy and sadness, all the things.
We're supposed to experience everything. Yeah. And I went back to dance when my mom had passed of cancer, and I had left my practice and I sat with her, and that was really a very pivotal moment for me. It was also my lowest ever in my entire life. And it made me take assessment of what's important in life right now. Here's someone who, couldn't get up to go to the bathroom by herself. She needed help with everything. The things that she used to do, just getting in your car and going to the grocery store, that you'd say, oh man, I have to go to the grocery store today. Well, she couldn't go to the grocery store. There's a lot of gratitude that comes from watching somebody lose.
Yes.
That you take for granted, right?
Yeah.
And I was down and out and I was depressed and I wasn't happy. And I did have someone ask me, well, what brings you joy? And I could not answer that question. I said nothing. My answer was absolutely nothing. I had no anything. And so I started to really take assessment and said, well, how can I bring my joy back? And I said, well, what would I have done if I was 2 or 3 or 4? What would I have done? What did I really love to do when I was little? And I loved to dance. I grew up dancing. My dad was a musician. So every morning and my dad passed when I was 24 years old. So I had lost him already.
Yeah, me too.
And so I used to wake up every morning and go into the kitchen to get breakfast, and my dad would be strumming the guitar. And when we had parties or my parents would put gatherings together, there was always music. And at Christmas, we sang Christmas carols, and there was always music in my life. And when I really looked at it, I was like, I don't have music in my life. I don't have music in my heart. I don't have music around me anywhere. I'm not beating any beat at all. I'm literally just going through in silence. So I started dancing again, and it was not easy because my brain had completely detached from my body.
Sure.
Say, hey, Tricia, put your arm here, and it would go down here. It didn't understand. But what it taught me is that by using all of these different aspects of our brain, by having to learn choreography, by having to feel the music, by having to, get over the fact that someone might be watching me, things like that, all
Right.
these things that we worry about all the time. I don't have time to worry about them when I dance. I can't.
No,
I
it's
don't
like
have
me
time.
me
I
riding a
have,
horse, like
I just have to
presence.
let it go. And
Yeah.
by letting all that go, I became a better dancer because I
Sure.
wasn't thinking about it. And now I can do, 8 counts of choreo in an advanced class, and I may not
And
look
you're
exactly.
popping with the young kids.
I know I may not look like the 15-year-old next to me, but but I'm keeping
I love
up
it.
and I'm having fun with it. And I think finding your joy, if you're someone listening right now and you're like, man, I don't have an answer to that question, then your number one assignment is to figure out, what did you love to do? Did you find it, do something creative or start something creative? But there's something you used to do when you were younger. We innately go to joy when we feel sadness as a kid. It's in our innate nature. So
Right.
what brought you joy? What was it? And figure out a way to bring it back and just stick with it. Do not give up. I went every single week looking like an idiot next to these 15-year-olds. And I just was like, oh, I'm gonna go. Did I have fun? My assessment was, did I have fun? Was that challenging
Right.
and fun? Yep. Okay, cool. I'll go again. Like, I didn't
Yeah.
think, how did I look?
Right.
I didn't
Yeah.
even start
Well, think of
videotaping
all
it.
of the things in life we would never do if we thought, the preface was, am I going to think I look good doing this?
And it
Come
took me
on.
a while to record myself too. It took me a long time. And one of my
I
teachers,
was just thinking the same thing.
yeah,
I used to
one
be
of my,
like, no
yep,
video. Uh-huh.
yeah. And my teacher one time was like, look, if you want to get better at dance, you should start recording
Watch
yourself.
yourself. Yeah.
Because she's like, you think you're doing worse than you are. And when you
Right.
start watching yourself, you're going to see where you need to work, what you need to work on and what you don't. And I
But
think
accurately.
if we turned like our lives on ourselves and really took a good solid look at what are we really proficient at and what do we need to work on, and then we took those things we need to work on and we actually worked on them, imagine the growth and imagine how much that would calm the bears, because we're no longer trying to keep up with something that we don't understand.
Right.
We have to really take self-assessment and really be honest with ourselves about what we're allowing into our energy and our space. And just that alone can reduce adrenal stress dramatically and allow you to have a better focus on now, okay, what do I need to address in other areas of my health? It's progressive.
I love that. I love it. And now I think you already answered our wrap-up question just now. But then I was like, well, then that's not fair because I didn't give you a chance. What is one step listeners can take starting today to improve their health? And it could be,
Well, I've given you a couple. So let me
I
give you,
know.
I've already given you a couple. So let's look at this one. So let's deal with some of the external bears for a second.
Okay.
Ones that you're in
Okay.
control of, right? I always say there's 3 aspects to this. Number 1, ask yourself, is this worth my energy? Secondly, do I have any control over the outcome? And number 3, make a choice. Am I going to take it on? Am I going to delegate it to someone else? Or am I going to let it go? And when you start asking yourself these questions, I tend to find that most of them you're able to let go. And when you let them go, that's taking a different path. That's not continuing to walk right into the bear every time. So just some little small choices that you can make just by asking those questions. And when you start to feel that, I'm mad, I don't like that, I'm frustrated, I'm stressed out. Is it worth your energy? Do you have control over the outcome? And what are you going to do about it based on those facts?
That's gold right there. That's like the mic drop. I am glad I gave you a chance to give us one more thing. Before I let you go, I want you to, we touched on the book and but what is the name of the book for listeners?
Total Health Turnaround. You can definitely find it on Amazon. Sometimes it's on my website, sometimes it's not, but it's always at Amazon. And you can find me at drpingel.com. I encourage you, please follow me as long as you don't spend too much time scrolling, you can follow me, but say hello, because what is social media for? What's the good side of it? It's connection and finding like-minded people to help drive it forward. So allow me to help you move forward positively in your health. So say hello and connect. Don't be a stranger. And hopefully you'll laugh and have a little fun along the way with me.
Amazing. I really genuinely am so grateful for your time, your wisdom, your joy, your smile. Thank you so much for just everything you shared with listeners. Go get the book, go find her, because this is we're just scratching the surface of the remarkable life-changing, not only just information, but approach, right? It is, like you said, it's one step at a time. And it applies to literally everybody, especially applies to anybody listening to this podcast. So thank you.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
For everyone listening, remember you can get those show notes and transcripts by visiting inspiredliving.show. We'll get information on the book, the websites, her Instagram, all the places to find her, maybe a dancing video. I will see you guys next week. I'm just going to have to tell you that. I don't know, because I love talking to you. I don't know what is going on, but I'll just write down what time it is, because I usually I'll do, split screen. Zoom is stuck. I wasn't even positive. Are we still recording? Now I can't stop recording. It's fascinating.
I did not see, it says recording, and I did not have any lag with you where
everything was great, except that I can't minimize Zoom. I usually just put you next to my notes. You know what I mean? And now I can't stop recording. So I will close. When I close it, it'll stop recording.
Okay, good. Are you coming to the summit next week?
I'm not.
Oh, okay.
I know. I know, yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I know they're saying last one. But
I think it's last one in its current, like the way it's been.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So we are talk about stressors. No, we're moving clinics, like now. So, yeah, and rebranding and redoing, and so lots of opportunity to recreate, and our perspective is, I'm excited.
Good.
It's a lot, but I'm excited.
Good.
So, yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you for your time. I hope this
Thank you.
well.
It's perfect. I just was like, are you kidding? As long as, and I know the recording is good, so I'm happy.
Okay. All right, sweetie. Let me know when you're releasing it, and I'll promote as best as I can.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Thank you.
Have a good day, hon.
You too. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity. Did you enjoy this episode? Please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to get a transcript of this and every other episode, just head on over to inspiredliving.show or click on the link in this episode's description. There, you can also find everything we discussed in this episode, including links and information about our guest. You can even send in your questions to be answered by Julie in a future episode. That's inspiredliving.show. Until next time, this is Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, helping you take your power back.